Doctors for the Environment is very concerned about the health impacts of coal seam gas drilling, especially given the massive expansion that is planned for this industry and the potential for cumulative effects over time. Today I'm going to outline the risks to human health from coal seam gas. And roughly the health impacts can be divided into direct and indirect health impacts. Direct health impacts mainly stem from the process and the chemicals used in hydraulic fracturing or fracking, which stimulates gas to flow from a well of an unconventional gas type. So just to recap briefly, it involves pumping very large volumes of water, sand and chemical additives at high pressure down a cement case gas well and into the coal seam. This quite literally fractures the coal seam and provides numerous new pathways for gas to flow. These fractures are held open by sand or another propping agent, and between 15 and 80% of the water that goes down comes back up to the surface. Each well requires a custom-made recipe of additives and chemicals for successful fracture stimulation. In Australia, the chemical additives that are used in fracking haven't actually been assessed for that use, and most haven't been assessed at all by our national chemical regulator. Nor is there any mandatory requirement for gas companies to disclose exactly what they use. In the US, an independent agency has compiled a list of about 1,000 different products used and over 600 different chemicals, but there are many gaps also in this information. Effects of chemicals on human health depend on toxicity, dose, route and duration of exposure, and the health status of the people involved. Health effects can be immediate or long-term, direct or indirect, such as via effects on the food chain. Long-term concerns include endocrine disruption, fertility and reproductive effects, and also cancer. These can occur with very low chemical exposures over a period of time. Doctors for the Environment's concern is the uncertainty and the lack of regulation of chemicals used in the CSG industry. What is needed is full mandatory disclosure of all chemicals used in fracking and assessment of their potential for short and long-term harm. So in addition to this problem, hydraulic fracturing can provide a pathway for chemicals that are used in drilling and fracking to enter groundwater by inducing connections between the coal seam and overlying or underlying groundwater sources. The industry cannot guarantee that this won't happen. Fracking by nature cannot be fully controlled and involves a permanent alteration of subterranean architecture and water flows. And last but not least, fracking uses very large volumes of water which may otherwise be utilised for domestic, agricultural or environmental needs. In fact, the message about fracking has got through, and Chris Hartcher, our New South Wales Minister for Resources and Energy, recently announced a moratorium on hydraulic fracturing until the end of this year. The local energy company here also assures us that they're not planning to frack in the Illawarra or Burragarang project areas. So now I just want to move on, because for argument's sake, let's say that we don't have fracking and that there aren't those risks. Unfortunately, there are quite a few other risks that don't involve fracking. Firstly, coal seam water. Coal seams hold a lot of water under high pressure, and in order to release the gas, water has to be removed and the seam depressurised. Coal seam water is not just any sort of water, it's got quite a range of contaminants in it. Contains volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, including variable amounts of BTEX. It is heavily saline and is not suitable for agricultural or domestic purposes. It contains heavy metals and radioactive compounds, including arsenic, cadmium, chromium, lead and uranium. Any spillage or uncontrolled release of fluid from a well, such as occurred with AEGL's Glen Alpine well when they were cleaning it in May, will contain these compounds, which are individually and together a health hazard. This was quite close to houses, by the way, and the wind was blowing it across. A CSG well continues to produce water. This water would need extensive treatment before it could be released safely back into the environment or used for other beneficial use. But this is actually not happening. In New South Wales, there are no formal requirements for CSG companies to treat or even test their CSG water. One company has stated their intention to use the CSG water for irrigation by blending it with fresh water. Not only will many of these contaminants end up in the food chain, but also in the waterways. The salt will gradually destroy the soil structure and degrade previously arable land. Second risk to health is air pollution. Leakage of methane gas is common. Methane is colourless and odourless, but displaces oxygen in the bloodstream of mammals. It's flammable and can form an explosive mixture with air at levels as low as 5%. Methane inhalation can cause symptoms of tiredness, headaches and dizziness. Evaporation ponds containing wastewater result in the transfer of volatile chemical pollutants into the atmosphere. These can combine with methane and vehicle emissions and produce high levels of ground-level ozone. This is a potent inducer of chronic respiratory disease. Flaring of gas is used to dispose of waste or excess gas. This process contributes both to local air pollution, releasing VOCs and heavy metals, and to greenhouse gas emissions. CSG is a fossil fuel, despite it widely being promoted as clean. Burning gas produces about 45% less carbon per unit energy generated than coal. However, a full life cycle analysis of the greenhouse gas emissions of CSG has not been undertaken in Australia. Fugitive emissions of methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas in itself, and the production methods of CSG need to be taken into account. An analysis by Citigroup released this week noted that emissions from different CSG projects can vary significantly. But when the most pessimistic assumptions are made for CSG and the best possible assumptions are made for coal, the greenhouse gas emissions from those are about the same. In fact, that was shown on the graph that Tom had up with the overlapping ranges. If you looked at the CSG domestic and the black coal, there was just about an overlap between those two ranges. So we urgently need a full analysis, and we need to compare CSG emissions with renewables as well as with coal. The International Energy Agency has warned that there is a danger that over-reliance on CSG will delay the vital transition to renewable energy that we need to avert dangerous climate change. Because climate change is the biggest health threat ever to face humankind. It is estimated that 400,000 deaths per annum globally are currently attributable to climate change. This has actually doubled in the last decade. Food quality and security are essential also for good health, and agriculture is already under threat from climate change and will be further compromised by the CSG industry. CSG infrastructure involves a well every 0.5 to 1 kilometre and a network of roads, gas and water pipelines with their surrounding easements. This infrastructure alone breaks up productive land and makes it hard to farm. Add to this the CSG contamination risks to water and soil. Prime agricultural areas such as the Liverpool Plains in New South Wales are undergoing CSG exploration. The soils there produce 4 times more food than in the surrounding areas. These soils will be degraded and our food security eroded if the industry goes ahead unchecked. Mental health impacts are many and various. CSG mining threatens existing sustainable industries in rural areas, such as the Hunter Valley wine and tourism industries. CSG threatens natural bushland reserves, such as the Pilliga scrub. As communities lose livelihoods and landscapes, their mental health suffers. With economic winners and losers in rural areas, as Alan outlined, previously close-knit communities become divided and tension and disharmony increase. Here in the Illawarra, Apex Energy has 3 petroleum exploration licences, 2 of which cover the Illawarra escarpment from Helensburgh in the north to Dapto in the south. And their objective is, and I quote from their website, to define and produce methane gas from current and abandoned colliery workings and from unmined seams. They point out that many abandoned mines are full of water, and they would like to, and I quote again, utilise this water for the benefit of the community. Has this water been tested for coal seam contaminants? How and where is the water going to be treated, and what beneficial uses are proposed? The other PEL surrounds Lake Burragarang that holds Sydney's drinking water and is part of Warragamba Dam. This PEL also contains 9 abandoned coal mines. Further disturbance of these workings risks contamination of Sydney's drinking water with coal seam water. The more mines are disturbed and the more wells that are drilled to coal seams, the greater the risk. And even without fracking, what will be done with the dirty produced water? Trucked to a treatment plant? You're talking roads and hundreds of water tanker movements per day. But do we really want to take the risk with the drinking water catchment for 4.5 million people? No. This little map here is off the Apex Energy website, and you can see the boundaries of the PEL actually include the dam, in fact, include the water. So we've recently written a submission, my organisation, and it's available on the website if you want to have a look. Our recommendations are there's quite a few of them. I won't go through them now, but you can have a look on the website. But in summary, the rapid expansion of CSG in New South Wales and Australia threatens human health in multiple ways, and DEA would like to see a moratorium on further development of CSG while a full health impact assessment is done, and done nationally. Thank you.